Dear Cosmo babies, on this week's episode, we are chatting with our good friend Travis Parker. I'm your host, Amy MacArthur, and I have my co-host with me today, Russell Mays, and we're going to jump right into it.
Sweet. Well, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate you taking your time. I'm sure you're quite busy with all the things you got going on, all the irons in the fire. So for those that aren't privileged to know, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your hair journey?
Thanks, Russell, and thank you, Annie, for the introduction as well. Yeah, I've been a hairdresser for 36 years. I have been an educator for over 20 years. I started off like everybody else in cosmetology school and left school lost and sought finding answers. And I was a driven human being that continued to pursue education and mentors and looked up to idols and wanted to be them when I grew up. And now as a grown up, I'm just trying to uphold, hopefully inspiring others to pursue education as well. But yeah, many journeys in between. My earlier stages with education was I was very inspired by Tony and Guy. And I remember seeing James Morrison back in the day and just thought, my gosh, like that's how you're supposed to cut hair. And back in the day when I was getting started, it was all VHS. So I'd buy every VHS cassette, thing that I could buy and every book that you could buy at a trade show. And I was just all in on anything they could put out, and they really sang to me. So that led me to eventually having a small opportunity with them as an educator. And that was back in the early 90s. And I stood up in front of people crumbling because I was petrified to public speak. But it was my first experience as an educator and as a teacher, and following a script was the only thing I think kept me alive at the time. And years later, I opened up my own space, and that was my first journey as a business owner, and had the opportunity to write my own policies and procedures and learning experiences to drive the team through education that would help us brand it and brand our company. And that led to an invitation to work with L'Oreal, which I ended up working with them for 16 years. And just about 6 months ago, resigned with them to pursue my academy, which I've now had my training academy for the last almost 7 years now. And just pushing, us into a better and stronger understanding of how to find end results when it comes to cutting hair.
Yeah.
And that's a clip note. There it is.
That's awesome. I love it.
Now, when the VHS era was out, when you could only get your education through VHS tapes, were you a member of the subscription? Because I know once a month there were certain subscription companies that would send out a video once a month. Did you ever do that? No,
I didn't. Yeah. And I was a broke kid, so that would have totally saved me a buck. I mean, I was eating ramen every night in those days, so that would have definitely saved me $1. I could have bought some chicken.
That's funny. So when you went to beauty school, what made you want to go into hair? How did that come into your thought process?
That's funny. I was just laughing with my editor right now because we were sending each other little goth pictures of he and I, and we get into this banter back and forth. But I was a goth kid back in the 80s, and I was inspired prior to that by a lot of punk rock stuff in the mid 80s, and then got into a lot of gothic stuff in my late teens. And where I grew up in Monterey, we were on the poor side of the tracks. And so we didn't have any money to go get our hair done. And back then there was nowhere to really get your hair done in that sort of a vibe or style. And so we started doing each other's hair garage style. And one of my buddies started school, and I was 15 at the time. And he's like, "Yo, Trav, like, I think you'd like it." And I'm like, I don't think I would. And I was totally against it. And Bart Repsicle was my dude. He totally inspired me. He pushed me, and he just kept saying, "Dude, like, we're doing each other's hair. Like, it's cool. Like, you would like it. It's our tribe of people."
Yeah.
And so I looked into it, and you had to be 16. And, when I was 16, I signed in. And at that time, being in high school, the state, I guess it was the state, had a program that would cover the costs of it. So I was able to get through school without, pushing a penny in any direction. And but to that point, as much as he had to convince me to get in, it was that moment for me that the minute I walked in that door, I looked around the room and I'm like, this is my group. This is my people. And this is what I've been looking for my whole life. And,
Yes.
36 years of being a hairdresser now, I end up in trade shows and I'm like, my people, I'm just so juiced. I'm so jazzed.
Welcome home. Welcome home.
Yeah. I love us weirdos, bring it.
Absolutely.
Like, give me colored hair, give me personality, give me somebody that resists the system. And I'm going to be your best friend forever.
Yeah.
Now, when you graduated, did you go through an apprenticeship yourself, or did you just jump right in at a quick service and start doing hair?
That's a great question. No, I didn't jump into having any sort of mentor in the very beginning. When I graduated from cosmetology school, I was still in high school. And so between my junior and senior year, I ended up working at, this kind of divey little salon up in this town called Marina, just outside of Monterey, which is where I was at the time. And I worked in there, and there was myself and one other girl that worked there. And we literally were just biffing everybody's hair up. I mean, from like over perming their hair and melting it off to cutting it completely wrong. And
you want to make sure that perm stays, so cook it a little longer.
The longer the better, right? Yeah, couldn't be undercooked, could it?
No.
No, not at all. Fair. Yeah. So, Leah was her name, and I, we were kind of fumbling through things together, and this woman, Kathy, owned it, and she was a nail tech. And so she had nothing to offer us in the hair realm. And so my senior year of high school, I just, I cut my brother's hair. I cut all my friends' hair. I probably made $3,500 that year. And then I moved down to San Diego, and I got a job right away at a salon that my brother was getting his haircut at, because he had moved here to go to college first. Mm-hmm. So I sort of chased him down. And this was a salon that he was getting his haircut at. And he's like, yo, my little brother's going to move down. Would you hook him up? And they're like, well, it just happens that we have a space. And so I got a job there. The place was called Model Call. I ended up staying there for 13 years. And Roger Tuttle, the owner, was just a rock star. Like, he was amazing. He worked for a company called Focus 21, which is a back in the day company.
Yeah, I remember.
And, you remember?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I remember.
And then the two other gals that worked there worked with him kind of as an assistant to Focus, him with Focus 21. And that was the first real educational way of thinking I'd ever seen. That was a real, I shouldn't say it that way. This was the first organized way of thinking about haircutting that I'd ever seen in application in a salon, aside from the VHS tapes that I was watching. Yeah. And so, that right out of the gate, each one of them became a mentor to me, because I was this little kid. I was, 18 years old, barely. And I just out of my parents' house. I had no direction aside from trying to fumble through college, which I didn't finish college. And they really kind of led me along the beginning trails of those first primer years of my life. And from there, it was all up and a million downs. But it was looking up at understanding that if I proceeded with looking at education in a certain way, I was developing and I was growing, not without mistakes again. But it was certainly an infrastructure for me.
So at what point do you feel like you became a success working behind a chair, and you felt like, yes, I can make this a career?
I think I can even rewind the tape with that question, because I think I felt that I was a success back on that first day that I walked into school. Awesome. I was always a CD student in school. My mom was a teacher. My dad was in the Army. And so I had this militant background with a mother that was a teacher, and I still sucked at school. And again, as soon as I walked into cosmetology school and I started sort of fumbling around with hair, I realized that this was my medium. And I realized that I had an ability to see an end result before I started a process. And I didn't understand how to navigate the process because I hadn't had proper instruction on it yet. But it was the first thing that I could really, almost like sculpting, I could almost get an end result without having much information in it. And I felt success, I'd say, in my relatively in my early years. I'm not sure I knew how to truly measure success.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it was, soccer, it was my biggest kind of American sport I was into, and I sucked at it. And yet I loved it. And baseball, I tried for a couple of years and I sucked at that. And again, I just wasn't superior in school. And so I kind of felt like I was a bad case in that, world. And so I think it was right in the beginning. And then fast forwarding just a bit, my first year at the salon called Model Call that I mentioned, I made $9,000 my first year. The second year I made $18,000. So I doubled my income. And think about living on $9,000 or $18,000, right? Not a lot. And this isn't that long ago. It was not like it was in the 1920s, right? It's just all in the early 90s. Yeah.
New cars didn't cost.
Carriage in, you know what I mean?
A new car didn't cost $500. You know?
Yeah, for sure. And so, that second year, I was like, yo, I just doubled my income. Like, that's freaking bananas. And then my third year, I made $36K, and I'm like, oh, I just doubled it again. Like, if this continues, I'll be a millionaire in moments. And, and I think that those were the days where I was like, oh my gosh, like there's real money to be made in this. And that was real money to me. That for where I was at that age, like, again, I didn't grow up around money, and I didn't grow up with a lot of instruction in this way. So, yeah.
And also, not to interrupt,
please.
It's something that you built yourself. It wasn't a job you went in and then they handed it to you. You started from nothing and built that up yourself. So the sense of reward has got to be massive.
Oh, massive. I mean, that's one thing I really applaud my parents over, was that they never allowed me to be bored. Like, if I said I was bored, my dad would literally kick me out of the house, or kick me in the head, one or the other, or kick my head out of the house. Right. And, and I only got what I deserved. And I wanted a lot more. And so it wasn't going to come from them. And so I had to figure out, my brother and I both, we had to figure out how to do that. And without, any sense of entitlement, I just was sort of raised in that way, that if I wanted it, I had to make it happen. And I very much am that way today. Like, I'm no different. I work my ass off to have what I have in my life. And I don't, expect anything to happen as a gift ever. And when it does, I'm blessed,
Yeah.
So how long did you actually work behind a chair before you thought, I want to open my own salon?
There was a minute between all of that and opening my first space. I opened my first space, I think, in 2003. So I moved down here in late 89, basically 1990. So 13 years in there. So yeah, I worked at Model Call for that entire time. And, I just got to a place where I was kind of ready for that next stage, that next step, and that next level of maturity. And I started dreaming, like most of us do as hairdressers, of what is that next step. And so, I started kind of conceptualizing what, my salon would be. And I was really obsessed with interior design. I was always an artistic kid in that sense, no matter what I was navigating it to. And so I started kind of putting ideas together of like, oh, I could do a salon. It would look like this and it would look like that. And, all the cosmetic things that make you no money just cost you all your money.
Yes.
Yeah. It wasn't like, oh, I can make more money. It was more along the lines of like, I'd have the coolest looking, salon in San Diego. And so, that was back in early 2000s. And then 2003 is when I opened it. And
had you been doing
like that next step?
Had you been doing any training of apprentices before this, or just your education outside of the salon?
So working with the group there at Model Call, again, they were all really driven. We were this super hip salon down here in San Diego. We were really the salon that everyone was going to if they had aesthetic direction and trending style. So they were always sort of forward thinking, not just on, a trend based look, but, how do you create it? And so, truly, I would say that that was my foundation level when it came to mentoring and aspiring to that, be better and stronger. And then in the mid 90s, one of my buddies was running one of the only distribution channels of Tony and Guy TG hair products in San Diego for the US. And so he was good friends with Anthony Mascalo and the Mascalo brothers, James Morrison, and all those cats that were, building, the Tony and Guy presence in the US. And this was prior to them doing their stuff in Dallas. And so he used to party at my brother's clubs. And so we used to all hang out, and he was, he would be like, Trav, like, you should come to our classes. And then, I would go to all the classes, and then he's like, you should teach. And I'm like, no way. Why not? I'm like, because I'm petrified. I'm inferior. Like, I go to classes. I don't teach them. What are you talking about? You're a nut. Right. And so, I was definitely surrounding myself with people that were pulling things off just because I was drawn to it. I'm like, I want to be around cool human beings that are crushing it. Yeah. And as that, I listen to Gary Vee all the time. He talks about this stuff constantly. If you want to be something, surround yourself with people that are. And so, that just became my, I said the word tribe earlier, that, I mean this in the most respectful way. That just became my group of people. And so when you have people that are driving hard and towards things, you're like, well, F, like, I want that too. I don't know if I can cuss. He's like,
Yeah.
oh, you know, I want that
can't.
too. And
We're fluent in French. We're fluent in French.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's my first language, to be honest, and not true French. But yeah, so, you know, I just, all of that I think was culminating at the same time. And, you know, then my ideas of opening my first salon was like, okay, now I have some foundation with education. I'm starting to understand it. I'm still petrified to get in front of people, but I get the necessity of it. And, you know, life has got its weird ways of positioning you in places of discomfort so that you're, you know, going to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And as much as, again, I was, you know, I'd rather pull my skin off than get in front of people half the time. Life kept pushing me out on stage to do it or in front of people. And so, yeah, I had this big dream of, could I build a team of like-minded, you know, people, and then that would all lend to building the continuity with our brand. So as I was spending money on marketing, I had a platoon of people that were all marching, you know, to the same beat, with the same background, with the same consultation, with, you know, the same aesthetic, or not necessarily aesthetic approach, but the same approach, and then celebrating the individual aesthetic that I think complemented the you know, the differences in the brand.
Yeah. This kind of makes me think of something that has been a question, and not so much even a question, but a comment that I have heard quite a bit throughout my own career from other people, is that you mentioned earlier that you kind of got into hairdressing because it was part of the scene you were in. You were very like aesthetically drawn by like the 80s punk movement and those kind of things. And I hear a lot of times from people that they got into cosmetology specifically because they needed something that they weren't receiving in their own, like from their own group of people. And whether that's somewhere, a salon that they can go, that they are feeling their aesthetic is being complimented, or being surrounded by groups of people. What would you tell people, especially without social media, because you did this in a time where there was no social media? How do you find those people? Because again, people are like, I can't find my group, or I want to go do this to create something for my own group of people. But how do they then find a group of people to get involved with? Because it's like, clearly you are someone that is very driven, very self-driven, and we're able to get involved into Tony and Guy and things like that. But for people that may not have that like self-awareness, or are trying to get into cosmetology to create something, you know, like see a need, fill a need type of situation, how can they start to find that group of people to surround themselves with? Because we're out there.
Yeah, no, for reals, right? And fortunately, we do have the internet in a blessed way to connect us in ways that we just didn't before. No, I love that question so much. And I think it's so important. It's something that I've thought about a lot throughout my life and my career, because I still am looking for my people, right?
Yeah.
You know, I think as I grow, I'm going through unique stages. You know, I'm a 52-year-old man now. The average hairdresser is 24, 25 years old. You know, I'm not at bars and clubs hanging out with kids, you know, what I call kids anymore. Like, I'm in a different place in my life. I'm a dad, and I've got all these other things. So I'm still looking for, you know, my biggest compliment in a social nature or in a social group period. But I think the important thing that I've learned, and this wasn't intentional, like I didn't think like this when I was 20 years old or 25 years old, was, you know, I really pursued what my interest was. And then I found that the more I pursued it, other people were navigating to that same place. And like I said, the internet has, you know, really created this funneling system for us like-minded people to find each other. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think what we have to do is, sometimes you find that you're marching by yourself in the dark, and you're searching for what it is that complements you at that time in that phase in your life. And as the sun rises, you look to your left and you're like, oh my God, there's a person, not in a creepy way, but there's a person right there that's, you know, that's like me, and like, whoa, they're marching the same direction. And then you look over here and you're like, oh my gosh, like they're into this too. And you're like, well, yo, what's your name? And oh, you like hair too? And oh my God, and you used to be in punk rock. Like, that's so crazy. Me too. Like, have you heard of the band? You know, and then you start building this momentum. And as you continue to march, whether it's in the day or the night, I sound like I'm preaching right now, whether you're marching the day or the night, you start to find that magnetically, like-minded people start to surround you. Mm-hmm. And before you know it, you're part of a cultural group. And this group is something that helps you to take things to new levels.
Yeah.
But I think what we fear is being alone in general throughout life. And I think some of my biggest lessons in life have come when I'm alone. And if we can overcome the fear of being by ourselves, understand that that's part of our journey to develop and grow. And that's what navigates the direction that we push forth and towards. And that's just part of our development. Like, you're going to be alone in certain phases. Like, again, and that's not a bad thing. I've always grown the most when I'm by myself. You know what I mean? And then again, when I find myself, okay, well, now I'm going to do this, and then I start moving in that direction. And like I said, before I know it, if I just continue to walk forward under that belief, people naturally sort of navigate around me, or I'm naturally navigating into their world. And like, oh, I didn't even know this existed. And so, I think it's just important to give ourselves the patience of a process. And sometimes there's highs, sometimes there's lows, but we need to celebrate those moments when we're by ourselves, that we're not part of a group, understanding who we are, so that navigates our direction. And once we start to have that direction in motion, that's when we start to find passion. Passion isn't always the first step, and having the answers isn't always the first step. The first step is stepping. Literally.
Action. Taking some action.
Physically.
Every step towards success requires you to take a step towards that action in the faith that you'll be able to get there where you need to go, and you'll discover the way as you go. You're not going to figure it out before.
Yeah, so don't you think, Russell? I mean, has that not been your journey too?
100%. It's like, I have an idea. Okay, I want to go to New York. I get in my car. It's in the middle of the night. How do I get there? I don't know. I just start driving. I can see the next 100 yards because of my headlights. But I figure out that once I drive that 100 yards, I'll see the next 100 and which way to go, and the next 100 which way to go, and the next 100. So the path will present itself as I take the action towards what I think I want. Yeah. And sometimes I drive the wrong way. So what do? I say, oh, I did the wrong way. I'm going to turn around and go back and find another way. I don't sit there and wallow in the mire of, oh my God, I'm a failure. I'm just not going to do anything again because I made a wrong turn. No.
Well, and how the wrong turn can lead you to the right turn at the same time. You know what I mean? Like and I don't know if you feel like this, Andy, but there's been a million moments where I had this ambitious dream and I'm like, oh, dang, I'm going to do this or that. And then I start pushing forward like we're talking about. And then all of a sudden something smacks me in the face and the wind blows and I'm moving a totally different direction.
Absolutely.
And that puts something right in front of me that becomes my fate. Yeah. And at that moment, I'm like, oh, shit, I would have never thought about doing this, and now this is everything that I want to do. And again, just one foot at a time, and moving forward, it navigates you to where you're supposed to be. But embracing that journey and celebrating the moments in between, alone or with others, is all part of defining, I think, happiness and purpose.
I think it's important to talk about stuff like this, because for someone who's been in the industry for almost 40 years, having those feelings of like, well, I don't really know if this is my group of people, but I'm going to find out. And then I've been in the industry for almost 20 years. I also felt that way. And I think people listening to this podcast who are in school right now, who probably also feel this way, I think it's nice to know that everyone felt this way at a certain time. And it's not just like an individual, like you're alone out there in the ether, trying to figure it out. And is this the right path to take? But like, we all felt that way at one point.
Why do you guys think that we do feel so unique in these moments? Like, why nobody else has got it like this? We point these things out as like, this is part of all of our journey. But why do we start to feel so isolated? Like we're the only one that life picks on or doesn't give us the answers? Or where do you think that comes from?
I think because we're artists. And like we have a certain, like, I feel like with artists, you kind of have this like emotional mentality. Not all of us, obviously, some are more logical, some are more emotional, everything in between. But I think as a group, our industry at our core, we are truly artists. And I think that sometimes the part of being an artist is that loneliness that we tend to feel.
I look at it as it's part of the hero's journey. It's part of the initiation that in order to achieve something that's really valuable, you have to put yourself in a position where you feel very vulnerable. And it's that vulnerability that it's hard for us to admit. And once we're vulnerable and yet we still take action and we eventually get the skills to where we can achieve what we really want, then the reward comes, not before. And you have to go through that progress, that journey to get there.
Yeah.
find your
We
way.
can't rush reward either, right? I mean, from my experiences, the more I try to rush things, the more I think delay happens. The more it almost pushes it away.
Absolutely.
If I drink enough coffee, I can get there faster.
If I don't sleep for 3 days, I can get this done.
And then all this emotion kicks in, as we're saying, and then my most illogical behavior comes when I'm emotional. So if I've slept well and I'm just chill, then holy shit, can I see the horizon and that I can navigate towards.
Definitely.
So you have made the transition from, being a hairstylist yourself behind the chair to being a salon owner and training your staff. And now you've moved this education online. So you have a lot of online kind of education and trainings. So what's the benefit of doing online versus the negative of doing online? Do you see challenges and benefits to both sides?
I do. Yeah, I think when things seem like a plan B, we think about it negatively. And when COVID happened and online was sort of went from plan B to plan A, people were kind of like, well, I don't have a choice. And I was like, well, does it have to be a plan B, or is it just an option of plan A, period? And there's nothing negative about it whatsoever. Matter of fact, if I'm online, I can speak to people all over the world that are saving money by having to travel here or whatever else, and so for me, online became a way for me to navigate information to more people. I always had a limitation with doing it in person. So I think for me, it was always an option to connect with more people. At the same time, I've always been a nerd. Like, I love tech. I am very driven by technology in every field. It's been something I've sought out to understand more. Applying it to our industry has been something that always appealed to me, because our industry, I felt, was always very low tech in regards to adaptation of technology. And so for me, during COVID, I started working with a production company just before COVID happened, and things during COVID all of a sudden stopped. And I was like, well, I love technology. If I could invest in a couple cameras and get a couple things going on, I could really pull some stuff off right now and navigate my information, people that can't travel or do anything for that matter right now. And so, I lived on B&H for a minute there, and I spent every dollar I had on all this new equipment. I lived on YouTube trying to learn how to use all this equipment. And, I know you guys know a little bit about it, or you wouldn't have a podcast. And I went from a hairdresser all of a sudden to trying to understand a production world. And I was like, holy crap, like, this is cool. And I'm totally in over my head, but I flip and love it.
Yeah.
And then I started to reminisce in the thoughts of any sort of stage presence that I had ever had prior to all these moments. And I remembered that every time I'd go onto a large stage and I was getting mic'd up, I found myself backstage asking all the AV guys 1 trillion questions. And I used to think like it was just me calming my nerves down and not thinking about what it was that I was about to go do, because I was going to go stand in a bunch of people. And again, that made me nervous. But then I started to think, well, maybe there's this romance that I just have with AV, and I love audio video, and it's something that I'm into. And so the more I started delving into it and diving into it over COVID, I was like, I love this. And then I was working with L'Oreal at the time. And L'Oreal's like, hey, nerd, like, can you help us with some of our some of our digital stuff, during COVID? And I'm like, I can. And so I was running their broadcast. I was talent as well. I was coaching other people at speaking in front of cameras, because I had a lot of these things kind of in my background. And I was basically like a puppeteer running this whole production. And I was like, I just dig this, man. This is dope. And we get to connect again with so many different people. And so, I'm sort of expanding massively on your question. But it became that thing for me that, back to our, just moving forward with things, like, I didn't know that all of it was going to turn into what it's turned into. I didn't know that I was going to end up with a $40,000 studio in the other room in front of me right now. Like, I didn't anticipate any of that to ever happen in my life whatsoever. But when COVID went down and all of this stuff was happening, I knew I had to pivot. I knew I had to reach out to people and connect to people. And then when I was like, why does everybody think this is a plan B? It's just not. And it's a plan A with an incredible option that if you can go in person, then, that's awesome, because we get to like be physically in the same space. But, this is a way that if we do it right, we can really help a lot of people. And that's why I teach, is to help people develop it. Really has nothing to do with me at all. I was, as I said before, I was chosen, to get in front of people. And this was, my world just kept navigating and positioning itself like, Travis, so you're supposed to do this. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And, yet it kept happening. And so that was my role. But that's why I got into online, and now I love it. Now, as I think we were briefing before we got on, I've got a whole LMS system that, I'm building on-demand content. And I just did a webinar this morning, which maybe you hopped on, Annie. I don't know.
Aaron did. Aaron was on it. Yeah.
Aaron hopped in? Okay, rad.
Yeah.
And then I just did a podcast right before this. And it's become such a part of my life now. And I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Now, your online is more of a system and not just individual trend haircut videos?
Yeah, correct. For clarity, I've written a certification process on how to cut hairs. So, my thing is celebrating the individual artist, but let me teach you the architecture behind your artistry. Mm-hmm. And which is why we've always focused on mannequins and all that, because we want people to skin it their way. We're just teaching you how to build it. Yeah. It's primarily been based upon that. And that's primarily what we offer. But we are getting ready right now, which you guys don't know, we're getting ready to launch a package called Haircut Pro, which is 20 unique videos and 10 or 15, I forget right now, business related videos. And we're going to sell it as a package. And that has nothing to do with our certification, aside from the fact that in all the individual cutting videos that are trend-based videos, we're using our certification process as a means of example to build these trending cuts. And then we're launching our certification in an on-demand package right now as well. So I'm just finally getting to a place where I've got this script written out. The certification is robust. It's legit. And we believe we can build any cut upon it. So now that's what we're going to start to do is build more trend-related content upon a full system that continually is used to exhibit, again, as means of example, these trend-based cuts.
Yeah. And where can people find that? What's the web address?
So my academy is called Travis Parker Academy. The URL, the web address is travisparkeracademy.com.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah, and we'll have that in the description below for anyone that is searching for this. We'll make sure to link it in the description.
Oh my gosh. Thanks, Annie.
Great.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
Now, Annie always has her favorite question that she's got to end with. So this is like the coup de grace.
We're already done. I'm so sad.
Yes.
Too much.
I know. I'm like, I probably can ask you like 100 more questions.
Oh my God, we need a part
as
two.
Well.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. So my favorite question I love to ask people is like, with the information and the journey that you have taken so far in your career, what advice would you give yourself back in cosmetology school?
I know this Aaron's going to come out a couple minutes after today, but that said, or maybe it's not, I don't know, but we just posted a video today and it was me talking about what I would advise myself back in
I love it. Perfect. I love it.
Perfect.
And my editor's so funny. He put a picture of me. He put a picture of a baby, and then he took the baby's face off and threw my face over it. It's flipping hysterical. I started crying, laughing when I saw it. But no, I think it's a really great question. And when I was 18 or 16 when I started school, 18 when I graduated, I didn't think like I think now. Like I didn't have the ability to think this in depth upon any of the things that I think about now. Like I was a young little, pre-nerd back then. Now I'm a full old nerd. I think that the bit of advice that I have for all of us and what I could, go back and repeat in my life is to surround ourselves with people that believe in us more than we believe in ourselves. Surround ourselves with people that don't have the emotions that we have that build insecurities inside of ourselves. Surround ourselves with people that see our possibility and our opportunities. Mm-hmm. And if we continue to surround ourselves with people that are negative, that don't see things for what they could be, they see things in a negative way, or they gossip, or they talk shit a bunch, get out.
Yeah.
Exit. Don't hang out with people that are negative. And if you're one of those people that are negative, find people that are positive and allow them to infect you with positivity. Yeah. We all go through stages that are tough, and we all go through stages where our head is down. So we need to navigate around positive people. I have a big thing for supporting everybody no matter where they're at, because we're at exactly where we're supposed to be. But what is the meaning in that moment? A lot of us are jumping right into studio salons right now. And I celebrate those that have the bravery to do it. But I also question and pose this as a question is joining a joining a party of one, is that the best party? Going right into a loft studio and not having anybody to inspire you, having no one to mentor you, and having no one next to you that just keeps conversation going outside of your world. Is that the best place to go? And I'm not saying it's not, but I'm saying surrounding yourself with people that are inspiring, that have seen it a couple times, that have procedures in place, that have practical application in place and history in place, might be somebody that you could learn from. So I celebrate everybody's moment because we're exactly where we're supposed to be at that moment. But I challenge us all with a question of, would it compliment us to be around people that have had a couple days behind something, that they could share that with us to give us that wisdom to get us off to a better step and a better foot.
I do have another question actually for you too.
Oh, there's two, Russell.
I know.
We're not done
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm like, I feel like I could talk to Travis for like forever, but something that I was thinking about with what you said about moving to an online space and that you really love being in an online space. Do you have, like, as a personal preference, are you finding that you are loving being in an online space more than a one-on-one space with people?
No, I'm not. I love them both for different reasons. And I'm not sure if I could say I love one more than the other. But to be completely transparent, I've been in an online space for the last 2 years, more than I've been on stage or in front of large audiences. That said, I was really celebrating the fact that I was becoming stronger at speaking in front of a camera. And we all know when you get in front of a camera, it is quite different than speaking in front of an audience. Having that zero engagement when you're looking at a round lens is a very bizarre thing for human beings. You know what I mean? When we're used to looking at each other, through the camera as we are right now. And so I got to a place where I celebrate the fact that I didn't have a choice. And so it led me to greater levels of success in more of a rapid sense. But then I was just in Austin at the BTC show representing Arc Scissors. And I was up in front of 2,500 people on main stage. And then I had a classroom where I was in front of 250 people. And then I was in their booth doing stage work in their booth. And I came back with COVID. That part sucked. But I came back.
You're never leaving the office again.
I know, I'm like, online, you don't get COVID. I came back with so much like warmth and love and connection with the industry, like hugging new people and friends and speaking to people and watching them light up and having people come up to me and tell me that I gave them words that inspired them, that may have motivated them to make a decision. Having people still reach out to me from that show, with these incredible words of compliment. There's a beautiful thing about human connectivity. I mean, we were born to be around each other. And again, I'll use the word tribe again. In a tribal sense, there's a native part of humans that we're supposed to exchange energy and exchange love and exchange, compassion and empathy. And that's sometimes, as much as we have, the option of online, it's a different reality when we're in person. So yeah, I love them both equally. I love that I have the option to do both. I love that I have the confidence now at this place in my life to be myself, and regardless of the format. And whether, again, it's in front of a camera or it's online in a podcast like this, or it's in front of 10,000 people, like I just feel so lucky that I get to connect.
Yeah. I recently left a salon that I was working at, and the reason I was in the salon was because of the pandemic, and I wasn't able to travel, and our business had changed quite a bit with what I do with Hair Nerds. And so thankfully I had a friend in the area that I live that owned a salon, and I was like, please let me work for you. Like, I got to get out of the house. I'm not able to like do what I normally do and like connect with my industry in a meaningful way that I did before. And I'm finding that now that I'm no longer there, because, things are changing. The world is changing. We're traveling a lot more. We're getting back to what our business was pre-pandemic. And I'm finding that I'm missing them so hard. And I almost feel like I'm in this like backward spiral, because I feel like with the online space has opened us up as individuals to reach so many people and to have those connections and relationships through our online sources. And it is funny to me how I feel like I'm almost moving in this backward sense of like, well, I miss them and I miss working with them one-on-one, and I miss teaching them and training them and seeing their wins happen on an everyday basis. And it's so interesting to me on like a personal level, but I love being a part of our industry as a bigger picture, but like, I miss them so much.
No, I get it. I totally get it. And again, I think we're at again, at all times. And there's so much meaning in it in every way. And depends on how deep we want to dive. But yeah, I don't know. I knew how much I missed it until it was in front of me again. And yeah, I need it in my life for sure. I will never be 100% one or the other. I will always be a combination of both.
Yeah.
A hybrid.
I feel like
hybrid approach.
I'm going to speak for
it's
Russell.
about activity, right?
Totally. But I feel like that's Russell too, like I feel like you're kind of in this hybrid area also of the online and personal.
I heard a great quote. I can dive down some deep holes with AI and artificial intelligence, period. And there's a great quote that circulates around the AI world. And it said, AI won't take over the world, but the people using AI will take over people not using AI. And life's about adaptivity and using technology and the involvement of what humans have come up with to gain superpowers and to gain greater levels of knowledge or deliverables at levels that we couldn't before. And so I think like anything, I feel lucky for all of us that we have the ability to connect in different ways because it gives us superpowers. You know what I mean? We wouldn't have if we just did one or the other. So it's not about a choice of one versus the other. It's about adaptivity and staying relevant and staying connected so that we can always become a stronger, better self.
Definitely.
That one thing that a friend of mine told me that really struck me and hit home it's similar to that is that he could always tell how old a hairdresser was by the type of hair that they did. Like whatever their photos were on Instagram, he could always tell how old they were because they tend to not grow out of an era where they reached success and felt comfortable. And I thought, damn, I don't want to be the old guy still doing haircuts from the 80s. I got to update my shit so I'm modern. So I have to continue to grow and continue to get out and to do things and stuff like that. And it's a lot like I have to learn new technology. I have to learn new approaches. I have to learn new hairstyles. I have to learn different ways of doing the same thing. And online is that sort of new thing, whereas the old way was you go to a hair class or a seminar or a hair show. So.
Yeah, well, and I think, Russell, too, when I was anywhere between 18 with my fake ID to 35, I lived in a world that was cool. Like it was part of my everyday. Like I didn't have to try to find what was trending at that moment. What would the next, what was the spring collection of 2024? Like I was around people that were already busting that style, or they were the street culture or the early adapters that were inspiring pret-a-porter that was putting that into, mainstream marketplace on a consumer level. And so like, I didn't have to do anything. I was immersed in it. Now, again, as a 52-year-old man, like I have to put forth effort to not become, an 80s hairdresser, Russell. I'm not, you're going to find me on the side of a soccer pitch watching my 12-year-old play soccer, not hanging out at some dope club in New York. You know what I mean? And when I'm in New York, I'm like, bring it. But that's moments in my life. So, I think what we have to do as we get older, or as I'm not going to say it that way. What we have to do throughout life is always figure out what keeps us relative and keeps us inspired. And it's so easy for the wind to blow and blow out the flame, right? And then all of a sudden we're sitting there in the dark again. But in that moment, back full circle, that's when we start to march forward again. That's when we start to feel uncomfortable again. And if you're uncomfortable, you're probably growing. You're probably developing. And if you're in motion, you're probably moving because it's just logical. It's the sum of the effort. You're probably growing and you're probably moving. And with that said, if we continue to keep our eyes open, aware, and alert, we never stop developing. And there, in so many ways, we can always inspire. So yeah, I think it's just different for us now, Russell, because we are a minute older, and I don't know if you're my age or not. But
I plead the fifth. I'm 39 again. I've been 39 now for 17 years, so I have anniversaries. I don't have birthdays anymore.
Well, the good thing about that is you're taking the hairdressers and we can't add. So that's
right. That's right.
You'll always be 39 in my book, man.
Annie's keeping me young by dragging me to London at all these underground clubs and all that stuff. So you should come to London with us for our next hair adventure.
Dude,
that'd be awesome.
That would be so fun.
Bring it.
Will you be at Salon International this year, Travis?
When is it? I'm not that I'm aware of.
It's on October, the weekend of the 14th, 15th, 16th, I believe, a couple weeks out.
Mm-hmm.
October 15th and 16th. Look at me writing this down while we're live.
Yeah.
No, but I would love to come. Should I come? Hang out with you guys?
Always.
Sure.
Always.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Come along.
I'm
There's
like, just,
space.
jump on an international flight just last minute. Why not?
Always space.
If we can make it happen, let's make it happen.
There you go.
Is it in the UK or?
Yeah, in London.
Yeah, in London.
Oh, sick.
Yeah.
Dude,
yeah.
I need a little UK trip right now.
Yeah,
the hair nerds have been throwing these educational, trips, these destination education things, and they have been so much fun. Have been so great. I mean, it broadens your horizons, allows you to see things from different points of view and be inspired at the same time. It's really incredible. I urge everyone to jump on one, whether it's Japan or London or wherever else we're going. So,
yeah.
Oh my God, that's really awesome. How cool do you guys do that?
Yeah. It's a lot of hard work, but it's worth it. So
she's the cool kid keeping the old guy cool,
Yeah, but Russell, that's back to everything, right? We can really shoot ourselves in the foot, and and I'm not speaking about you and I, but us as humans, and back to hanging out with people. Like, it's about gravitating towards people that are helping us grow. And the older we are, the more we have to offer wisdom. And so, for anybody younger than us, that's invaluable. For anybody younger than us, for us, it's invaluable, for us to stay connected. And so, we all need each other.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was really a pleasure. And when you get your program up and running, we should have you on again. And so you can tell us all about that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely.
I can't wait. Yeah. Within the next few weeks here. So
there you go. Perfect.
Definitely.
Pushing hard right now.
Awesome. Leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. I almost had it right. I always screw this up every time. Anyway, follow us on your favorite social media. Give us a DM for what you'd like to see and hear in the future. And thank you so much for Travis and Annie for having us and having this whole platform. I think it's awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much. What a brilliant time. Cheers.